The second stage shelter are dedicated to prevent uh, domestic homicide. In fact, for 8% of the women who come out of an emergency shelter, 8% of them still have extremely high challenges given the dangerosity of the ex-partner. So then it is the worker, the worker at the first stage, at the emergency stage, at the end of her stay will do this evaluation and will say and will see that she cannot just go outside in a normal renting. She has big challenges with security, because unfortunately domestic violence doesn't cease when you separate. And it's even the opposite, because when you really get separate, then the guy, he understands he lost his toy for good, and then the homicide risk is far higher. The literature says within the next year of a separation, the risk is 80% up than for normal population. 80%. So this is really what we tackle. So it's 8% of those coming out of emergency shelters. And when we see the level of services in emergency shelters, it will give us an estimate caseload of 500 women per year. And at present, with the capacity, we are able to host half of them. So concretely, there is a need to double the capacity in second stage housing in Quebec. We have refusal rates as high as 75% in Montreal City and 37% in the regions where there are services. And there are still 5 regions with no services. So we're really, really far behind the needs. And my understanding is that the government is shaken by the news, which are not new to us, by the way, and not new to COVID, and all this scarcity of these resources are. But today, as it's right in the front page of the papers, the government want to take action, at least to announce actions. So then we shall see what happens in the next weeks with announcements, but then later on, what will happen for real in the concrete life from the announcements to the field. This is something else that we have to monitor very carefully, because as we've seen in COVID, there were big announcements, but we've not seen the money.
When you say the rates of refusal and the other statistics that you mentioned, are these statistics from during the pandemic or pre-pandemic?
Pre-pandemic.
Okay, so I guess maybe we can assume that these have possibly increased.
And this is what our colleagues from emergency shelter say, really. I mean, the surge in demand was not for hosting during COVID lockdown. It was really for counseling by phone, by chat, by internet, by whatever, all the means we deployed. But the problem is the severity of the violence. This has really changed. We really see that the women, when they enter a shelter, are far deeper impacted by the level of violence they experimented during COVID than the cases we've seen before. They really wait the last moment to get out, or even, I mean, most of them during the lockdown were brought by the police. His neighbor calls to say there is a problem there. The police comes, take the woman out to a shelter. So it's not even it was quite a different way for them to come. It was less of that a lady would just come and knock at the door, which happens very often normally. Not all the women come via SOS violence conjugale, a number of them, but a number of them also call directly the shelters. So, and for us, the problem is that for these 8% of women, the emergency shelter, they don't get them out. If we don't have a space, they will keep them because of the security issue. So then you don't have any more places in emergency for the newcomers. You know, it has to flow. So it's very nice if now they announce more rooms for emergency shelters, but it has to come together with the ones that are needed for those who need a longer stay. Otherwise, and this is what happens now, for the lack of our resources, it obliges the emergency shelter to keep this woman 5, 6, 7, 8 months, when an emergency shelter length is usually 1 month. They go up to 3 months, but the average stay is 1 month. And those with acute danger issues, they have to get out to us in order to liberate rooms for others, and also because our services are very specialized for these very women. Because also there is the angle of service in terms of intervention is a bit different, because it's deeper. These ladies, for some of them, have never had the chance with their partner to even go do the grocery alone. So it's really kind of a rehabilitation at social life. For those who come from abroad, a number of them were parrainés. You know this parrainage system?
I'm not too familiar with it.
When you are an immigrant, somebody has to say a word for you, that to cover for you. And often it is their husband. So when she separates, the husband, he keeps the papers, he keeps everything. She doesn't have even a track of her procedure. So all this is really where the second stage has its added value, because there they can stay for 1 year. You know, they have service. So at the first months of the stay, it will be like 2 or 3 times a week. But as times goes, she will gain confidence. She will gain confidence in herself, in her security management, because we will teach them to organize themselves for their security after they would get out of us. So it's anyway, it is a need for these ladies, you know. And this is why we always claim for a continuum of services. And the continuum is including shelter, emergency shelter, but also transition shelter like us, but also external services. This is because shelters are far more than the beds. So, and all what is services to children, in second stage units, children also, I mean, I've been, of course, if you see what the lady has gone through with the children present, they are definitely highly impacted with the violence in that family. And there are some specific services that they need. And the good thing in second stage, they have time to go through that. In an emergency shelter, you deal with the emergency crisis. Okay, just get there, have food, because I'm in the street, or the police get me out. And for the vast majority, 1 to 3 months is okay for them to get more stabilized, to get another option to another flat, or to the family, or to a friend, or whatever. But those at risk, we can't then get them out even to their friends, because the guy, he knows where is her friend and he will get there. But we have specific police patrols and specific camera IT stuff in our houses so that it cannot happen. So this is really why we speak about continuum of services. Is for those cases, more acute cases, the need up to the end of it. And I would say furthermore, the continuum of service has also to take into account the perpetrator. You know, And this is another big chapter where we have to enter in discussion with the government, because, and they claim and they say and they shout out to the media, oh, but the poor guys also, they're waiting to have services, blah, blah. Okay, yes, but, and this is very important in the experts' recommendations. I have members, so shelters, that work very well with the aggressor groups, really, with a good perspective of the security of the women and children. And this is what we said, what is called the cell crisis. You know, when there is a cell crisis, it is because a group man or a group of women, like a shelter, would identify that this guy, we have a real issue there. Or this lady, what she says, or what we see in the children, ooh, this is really an indicator. So we would call them and call for the emergency cell crisis. So this is the perfect world. And this is what's wished in paper. Unfortunately, a number of groups that work with perpetrators are not aligned in there. They are more in the psychological approach of one individual that has his own problem and issues. They are not in the approach of responsibilization of the guy on what he did. And this is a big challenge for us in the security, because these for us are not partners to discuss about the security. They themselves have practices that are endangering more the woman. Like, for instance, they call for couple discussion, couple mediation, which is not at all appropriate in the severe domestic violence cases. And this, we said to the government, we want to sit with you to establish those criteria. You know, we have even 2 groups here in Montreal City that went out of the consultation table, domestic violence consultation table of Montreal, with all the 25 shelters of Montreal. You know, all of us are there, and they get off because they say, but these are not our clients. We are doing it's well-being of the man to prevent them to come to, etc. But this is not domestic violence. I mean, this is angry management, whatever, but it's not those guys that are really dangerous. And so we want to work with them. Again, we have very good examples of way to work with these groups. What we said to the government is, take care, please, not to fund on domestic violence budgets those that don't work on domestic violence with us. Because the objective of the national plan is to assure security of women and children. Because domestic violence is a gendered issue, you know. So maybe you have more specific questions, because then when I start to talk, I can talk after. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about the funding. I'm just wondering, just because I'm going to use this for a video story, is it too much to ask you to maybe angle your screen just a little bit more towards you, just because there's so much space above your head? It's, that's perfect. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much for doing that. So how much, if it's okay for me to ask this, how much funding do you guys receive from the government?
As of now, for the up and running second stage shelter, the funding is really appropriate since 1 year, and so altogether it's 5 million. And we have a rationale to explain how all of them are costed, because it depends on the size of the house. It depends, for instance, you have houses who have more family units with children. Then of course, those units will cost more in services, because we will have a specific person to deal with the children. So, but this is all the codification that we have negotiated for all the sector. So each and every second stage house running in Quebec today have the same level of funding according to the services they can provide. So there is no So depending if there's children or no children, we have a shelter, for instance, in one region. I think of one shelter who has mainly a lone woman. So she will have less staff and less funding because she cannot host children, for instance. You see that kind of thing. But it is very clear since this year, and only this year, when the plan of action, it dates from 2018. So it took 3 years to land all the money that was given. And in fact, what happens is that now at the last month, at the very, very end of March, they got their money for last year. This is the beauty of administration.
So the 5 million, that's per year.
Yeah.
And how?
And there is a need of an additional 6.5 million to cover for the new projects that we develop. Because of course, since 2018, since that the action plan has recognized second stage shelters, a number of first stage, they said, okay, let's go, because all the first stage, they know they need some second stage,
Mm-hmm.
So today I have 12 projects on the table
Mm-hmm.
that we were waiting for in last budget, that
Mm-hmm.
were not in last budget,
Mm-hmm.
that we shouted very, very high, and that unfortunately those Femicides put again on the table for the minister to say, yes, by the way, there is money. Okay, so now we are looking at that money. So for those running, it's fine. The money, the budgeting is today, but really like today or last week, okay. And we are really looking forward to the development plan. Because as soon as they get the green light for these new projects, we start the building. And in 9 months, it will be delivered. It's really a matter for them to take the decision.
So the projects that you're working on now, these are more second stage housing. About how many are you planning to build, I guess?
So it's the plan is to get, tell you, now we work on 140 units. And we will add another 117 units. So when I mentioned earlier that the need is to double the capacity, these projects that are on the table are really on the verge to cover the need. The problem after is the problem of repartition geographically, because I still have one region, which is Abitibi-Témiscamingue, where I have no projects, for instance. As of today, there are 5 regions with no projects, but my new projects are in some of these regions, except for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. So my last battle, whenever I will have gained those 12 projects on the table. By the way, we are discussing right now heavily with the government about those, because they want to do announcements very shortly. So we are really there, maybe, inshallah, I hope. And that's it. After is I think we will be capable to cover most of the needs. I still have a challenge to cover for Abitibi, because nobody raised their hand to say, hey, I will build one myself. But as soon as I see that it rolls out, that yes, okay, those that were waiting since 1.5 years are rolling out, hopefully. One of them will raise their hand, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. So sorry, I just want to confirm, you said 140 units you already have, and then you're looking to add 117.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So considering, I mean, I know you kind of already touched on this, but considering the increase in domestic violence during the pandemic, how many second stage shelters do you think, I guess, would be the ideal number to try and deal with this increase in the current cases?
In the current case, the problem we have really is that, as I said, this planification will cover for the needs except for Abitibi Témiscamingue. At the end of the day, the problem is when you build a new house, it takes time. It cannot be built like within 3 months. What we offer them is that some of these projects are not building, but buy a building and renovate. Then I will deliver in 3 months. Just give me the money now, I will deliver in 3 months. So it really depends of the which of these projects we're discussing. Some are really very quick to roll out and just waiting their green light. So altogether, at the end of the day, it will cover the needs, again, except for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. And these are the needs that we already had before COVID. So, you know, we have to, we are catching up. We're only catching up. And it might well happen that we might even need more. But for what we know and for the statistics we have today, which are pre-COVID, it's already that the need.
Thank you. And you mentioned you would need an additional, sorry, I could have this wrong. I just need to check. Did you say $5.6 million?
6.5.
6.5. Okay, perfect. 6.5. And I guess you guys have demanded or asked the government for this?
Yep.
And how was the kind of response to that?
It's not in the budget, and it's what we are discussing now. Since 10 days that they announce, oh, but there is no problem of budget for domestic violence, just ask and you will receive. Okay. So we put that again on the table, and once a day I have one of the cabinet calling me to explain this or that again more and blah, blah. I really hope we are on the verge to get them.
Do you think that the response has been a little bit different, or maybe a little bit more sensitivity considering the amount of deaths we've seen considering domestic?
Definitely. My understanding is that it's a communication plan they're looking at now. It's okay for me if the communication plan gives announcements that I'm satisfied. Then I can run after with that. But we need it to be said.
Okay.
And our fear is that it's so easy for them to announce for emergency shelter, for men groups, that they might skip the end of the continuum of services that I was mentioning, because our projects are more complicated because it is building, and SHQ programs are just a nightmare. So in fact, the problem we have is there is a finance issue, but there is also a procedural issues of all sorts that are huge constraints to the project. So even if they give me the money today, and this is what we tell them, you have also to smooth your ways, because otherwise it's just frozen in the administrative Cafarnaum, you know. And it's exactly that's what happened since the last years, that we're waiting, sending more information, and then the guy is not there the week after, it's another one, and you know, it's a nightmare. But today we are really at the level of sous-ministre and directeur de cabinet. But my understanding is really that they have an emergency in communication. This is their emergency. My emergency is a bit more on the core. But it's okay for me. I mean, at least these murders would have served the cause.
Thank you for explaining that. Just gonna double check.
I have to run out for 2 o'clock.
Okay, I'll try and scan through for the most important thing. I don't know. I guess considering this topic, do you think that there's anything that's really important? I mean, I guess my main angle is going to be kind of the lack of funding and need for it. Is there anything that you think I should consider?
What I want to say more is that here we focus really on shelter money. But this is a drop in the ocean of what's needed to correct the situation for women. As we've seen and said and claimed, the report of the experts, why did then they provision 100 million for 5 years to implement it? Because, I mean, all these murders, the ladies, they were not in shelter. But the guys, they were in prison or they were known by the police. So the core of the changing of paradigm is a reform of the judicial system, is having access to social housing when you get out of a shelter. I mean, you can always give some more millions to shelters, fine, and they will do the job, but it will change nothing in the society. So for me, I was very deceived by the budget because of my unit, of course, but in fact, this was a lower point for me. Because for me, the main point is that since 4 months, they have on their table a report of experts that they themselves convened 1.5 years ago. And we have a budget with no $1 to say, but they say, oh, we will implement the recommendation. Okay, well, with what money? With what money? And now they jump on the shelters. This is also why we say it's just calm, you know, because it's nothing structural. Nothing will change if there is no structural changing and then means, so money and staff and etc. to do the job. And this for me is the treason is there for me. And a treason, I say, I know the word I use here. The treason is there. And then another murder, and then another murder. Oh, we need to announce things. Population is worrying. Okay, go work on your judicial system, and don't cut 3 million in the l'aide juridique. You know what is aide juridique? You know, when you don't have money to have a lawyer, there is this public lawyer that will go for you. This budget has reduced their amount for 3 million. You know, so they can claim they want to do something for DV, the domestic violence, and then, oh, blah, blah, we'll give some millions here and there to shelters. Fine. It doesn't change anything.